Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Texas on Wednesday, June the 14th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about this aftermath of the Trump indictment or the arraignment, actually, in Miami. I've never seen anything like what we've seen in the last 24 hours. I guess that's why they call it historic. But the idea that he flew down there, he went to the courthouse, and then after that they had that reception at the Cuban restaurant Versailles, which is, by the way, one of the great Cuban restaurants of all time. Used to be that restaurant used to be in Cuba, and it actually came to Miami. The owners came to Miami and set up in Miami, and now they have that restaurant right there, and it's a real tradition there in Miami. So if you ever go to Miami, I'm going to put a free plug here for the restaurant. But if you ever go to Miami, that's the place to go to eat Cuban food. Versailles. It's one of many, I should add, but that one is probably the most famous one of all of the restaurants in that great city. Of course, a city with a huge Cuban American now population. But he was down there. I mean, he was greeted quite well. There was a good crowd outside. Thankfully, it was all very peaceful, no problems. The city of Miami did a good job. But what's happened over the last 24 hours is something that is just defies any everything. I mean, first of all, he flew back to New Jersey and he gave that speech last night. I didn't catch it live, but I did see bits and pieces of it. I think I've seen the whole thing, but not when it was live. And very dramatic, very fiery speech. Uh, Obviously, he feels very strongly about this, and I think he should. I think the indictment is honestly a travesty. I just don't think you do something like this. I don't think you write an indictment like this against the president of the other party so close to the election. I just think that there was no good. I mean, the judgment was horrible in having an indictment of this type so close to the election and so against the guy of the other party. It would have been a lot better, as we've mentioned before, if they had written a report of not just him, but also what they're finding with President Biden. If they had written a report and submitted it to Congress and then say, let's have a debate. You please clarify the law so that everybody knows what the law means. And it's if you read some of the reactions to the indictment, you get them from everywhere. You've got people saying the indictment is as good as it gets, and then you have other people saying that they overreached with the Espionage Act and that the President Records Act doesn't. I mean, all kinds of very smart people with a lot of different interpretations. So I think the Congress ought to sit down and revisit this law and at least give us a sense of what the Congress wants. I remember when this law was passed. It was not one of the, it was not anything that exciting, but it was back in the late 70s when President Carter was in the White House. And I don't remember that much of a big deal about it. I mean, certainly it was not written to send somebody to jail over documents. I mean, that was never the intent. So I personally think there was a bit of overreach in this indictment. I think it was a very bad idea. And as I mentioned before, I think the solution is to go to the Congress. Problem. We've got a problem with President Biden. We've got a problem with President Trump. You guys need to rewrite this and let us know what you want. I think that would have been the best solution. But an indictment in this political atmosphere with so much division, I think was just a complete and total disaster. And I think you're seeing in the reaction. But what we have seen in the last 24 hours, the kind of stuff that, never seen before. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. Now, what does this mean to the election? I'm not sure. I'll be very honest with you. I'm not sure what it means to the general election. Now, as far as the primary, at least over the next 3 or 4 months, it puts President Trump in the number one position, maybe too far ahead of the others. But one of the things I've learned about politics over the years is that things change. And what may look like today may not look like 3 months from now or 6 months from now. We're still a year and 2 months or 13 or 14 months away from the political convention. So we have a lot of time ahead of us, the primaries. We haven't even had debates. We haven't really had an opportunity to, to go through all of this and have a good understanding of what we have just seen. So I am not going to make a lot of predictions. I think at the moment you can say that Trump is ahead in the primaries and very likely will be the nominee. But how all of this impacts the general election, I don't know. It was a very close election, if you remember, in 2020, and it was decided by 50 or 60,000 votes in 4 or 5 states. So if those people were to flip to Trump, I guess he would win. But we don't know that. So I am not ready to go ahead and say that he's going to win the general election. But I think right now he is probably going to get the nomination, and we'll see how that plays out. But there's also, of course, on the other side of the field, you've got the Democrats, and I am not convinced that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. I am not. I just see signs. You've got Governor Newsom in California making a lot of noise and saying a lot of things. He sounds like a candidate to me. Sounds to me like he's getting ready to run, and he's just waiting for the opening. And the opening, of course, would be Joe Biden saying that he's not running for re-election, as happened with Lyndon Johnson back in 1968. So a lot of things are up in the air right now. But what isn't up in the air is that this indictment has created a backlash and has simply made things more passionate and has made the country more divided than ever before. And I think a lot of people like me look at this indictment and we go, wait a minute. What happened to Hillary Clinton? What happened to Sandy Berger, who was caught trying to get some documents out of the archives a few years ago? He was I guess he was a foreign policy advisor to President Clinton. So what happens, I don't know, but we have never seen stuff like this before, where a candidate can just get this kind of attention at one time, like President Trump can get. I mean, he has basically monopolized the media right now. It's all about Trump right now, and the other candidates who are running are simply not getting the attention. I see Governor Christie has been hitting Trump very hard, but he's not getting any attention. He's not going anywhere either, because this is not his year. I mean, timing has a lot to do with it, and I just don't think this is the best year for Christie. I think Christie in 2016 was a better year for him, because he was the governor of a blue state, and the Republicans were looking for a candidate who could win a state like New Jersey. But I think right now Christie is not going anywhere. And all these statements that he's making about President Trump, I don't think it's helping him either. And I also don't think that these attacks, I mean, the idea that he's going to go against Donald Trump on a debate stage and beat Donald Trump on debate, Donald Trump is going to come back at him with a lot of stuff too. And I don't think that's the best way to defeat Donald Trump anyway. I think there are better ways. So Christie at one time was a very strong candidate. I don't see him as a very strong candidate at the moment. I just do not. Well, things are happening in Latin America that are absolutely amazing. And the primary story is that China is advancing and moving all over Latin America. For example, China is in Cuba, setting up a base in Cuba. Now, people say that they had it before, but I don't think it was as advanced as it is right now. What's happening in Cuba, of course, is that the Cuban government is basically broke, and they need somebody to bail them out. And China is more than willing to do that in exchange for the proximity to the United States. So yes, there's no question about it. No question about it that Cuba needs money, and the Chinese are more than willing to provide it. But it isn't just China going to Cuba. The Iranians are going to Cuba, and they just went to Venezuela. So you have, what it looks like, a lot of people stepping on what had traditionally been U.S., not territory, but the U.S. area of influence, which was the Western Hemisphere. You've got China, you've got Iran, and I just think that this is new territory. And I believe that this is happening because there's a perception that the U.S. is in decline, that the U.S. is in decline because of the Biden administration. And I think that that's what the problem is, and that is why more and more and more of these things are happening, where China is Latin America looking for relationships, business relationships, economic relationships. They're really looking for natural resources. That's what they're in Latin America for. I have a story over at the American Thinker today about what appears to be a backlash against all this transgender and boys playing with girls and all that. I think that this stuff is really starting to backfire on the people proposing this, and you're seeing a lot more Americans saying, "Come on, that's not really civil rights to have a man who thinks he's a woman competing with a young woman on the gym team or swimming team or whatever it is." And there is a backlash. And what just happened in the White House, these people naked and these incredible scenes that we saw in that Pride Day, whatever they wanted to call it, including the flag. I just think a lot of people are getting turned off by that. And they're saying, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And unfortunately, the Biden White House doesn't seem to understand what enough is enough is. They're so committed to these groups that they can't seem to stop it and say, no, that's not a good idea to have people naked running around the White House. That's not up to the dignity of the White House. So hopefully, public opinion is starting to come around, and sanity is returning to public opinion, because the idea of a young man playing in a woman's swimming team or whatever, I mean, that's just crazy. That is just crazy. That has nothing to do with civil rights. That is just crazy. Absolutely, absolutely crazy. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Have a wonderful day. It's going to get very hot here in this part of the country. So I guess summer is almost here. Not officially here, but as far as the temperatures, summer is here. Thank you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, everybody.